Just listening to some Five Nights at Freddy's music by May Wants to Battle. Whoops! Anyway, guys, you know, there is such a thing as trauma. Everybody has things in their life, mainly stemming from their childhood, that they were afraid of. For me, animatronics is not one of those things. There were 3 things that I was afraid of growing up, 2 of which stemmed from nightmares, the other which, well, you'll hear. The first thing, well, I guess the third thing was kind of a nightmare too. The first thing, I don't know where I got it in my head as a child, but I had this idea that people in mascot costumes at Chuck E. Cheese or Worlds of Fun or wherever were serial killers or were serial murderers just waiting to get you alone. Guess what happens in Five Nights at Freddy's to a bunch of kids? That. Yeah. Animatronics never freaked me out. In fact, when I was younger, they fascinated me to no end because I was deeply curious about robotics. But the actual murderer, the purple guy, that freaks me out a little bit because it stems back to that nightmare. But there's another thing that freaked me out as a kid. Warning, I'm going to show this on screen right now. This literally gave me about 50 recurring nightmares as a child. Yeah, that. I don't know why. It doesn't freak me out anymore. At least not much. But as a child, the Donkey Kong Country Game Over screen freaked me out so much that when I was on my last life, my 0th life, or when I had 0 extra lives, I would give the controller to my younger brother who wasn't as good at the game so that he could die while I was in another room of the house. That's how bad they messed me up. So game over screens, people hiding in mascot costumes. And you know what doesn't help that get any better? Whenever your parents, namely your father, is well aware of your fear and exploits it every single time you go to a theme park or a theme restaurant. That wasn't cool. I lived pretty close to a World of Fun when I lived in Kansas City. Yeah, they had a Berenstein Bearland. Never freaked out my brother. They had the Berenstein Bears walking around. Sometimes they had the Peanuts gangs walking around in there. Every time we went to Worlds of Fun, he found some way to get me in Berenstein Bearland so he could mess with my head. Why don't you go over and hug them? Because they terrify me. Oh, they're not that scary. Not on the outside, not to you. But enough of that.
Mind of Ninjo!
Alright. It's time for another one of those. I keep on holding up my notebook because this is kind of my cheat sheet. So, speaking of games and depth, the third thing I was afraid of was heights, but that doesn't really apply here. About 500 falling dreams, so many that I could lucid dream after having so many. But speaking of games that are deep, normally when people think about games that are deep, they think about Earthbound. More recently, they think about games like Minecraft or Five Nights at Freddy's. deep in gameplay, deep in lore. But you know what games are really deep? Like, frighteningly deep? The N64 collectathon platform games made by Rareware. I'm not exaggerating. But, to get back to the story at hand, last time, we were just getting ready to go into what was at one point Fungi Forest. Hang on, let me get into a bit of a persona here. Our heroes, frightened out of their minds, none of the strongest still among them, intrepidly venture forth beyond the darkened, sunken doorway of what was once Fungi Forest. And on the other side, rotted planks, and a doorway arch that has ceased functioning. The only reason, sparks still fly from the connectors. The three remaining Kongs have a brief discussion, no speech bubbles needed, and eventually, Fungi is given his first ability by Cranky Kong. The ability to activate machinery that has ceased functioning. The Hipster Funky Plug maneuver. Using Hipster Funky Plug, Funky is able to reactivate the archway to Fungi Forest. And he enters, and we take this story about 20 years into the past. Fungus Forest is the deepest level in the history of gaming. There is so much lore. Fungi Forest. Sorry, I keep doing that because you're going to see where I'm going with this. You see, Fungi Forest was never meant to be in Donkey Kong 64. Fungus has never been a chief theme of the Donkey Kong franchise, either appearing sparsely or not at all in a few select jungle levels. And it really doesn't make any sense being in that game. Roll beta footage. Did that sound familiar? That was Clanker's Cavern from the Banjo-Kazooie beta footage. That's right, we're going beta on this sucker. The beta footage of Clanker's Cavern, minus a few instrumentals, is almost identical to a certain underwater track in Fungi Forest. Yeah. Almost the same. The fascinating bit is that in a magazine, I don't remember the name of the publication because, let's be real, I'm not going to do that much more research than I already had to do. For that. But the level itself is even more deep and convoluted than that. Fungi Forest is one of only 2 levels in Donkey Kong 64 that has 2 separate full boss battles. The other level being Frantic Factory, where you have the fight against Mad Jack, and Chunky can optionally fight Mr. Domino. Not a terribly difficult boss, but one that is technically a boss nonetheless. What is a legitimate boss is the Arich Queen, I think I'm pronouncing that right, in Fungi Forest. In fact, it's a more appropriate boss than Dogadon, the actual boss of the level, fought by Chunky. This is very peculiar. And the reason it's peculiar is because of the arena you fight Dogadon in. It's intense. It's frightening. It's exhilarating. More than, dare I say, even King K. Rool himself. And so, what you end up with is, at best, a theory. A plagiarism theory. I'm not going to do that to you, Matt. I love you and I respect you and your show too much. We're going back to the lost footage of beta footage of Banjo-Kazooie. It might surprise you to know that originally, the final boss of Banjo-Kazooie was not Gruntilda. And in fact, the game wasn't even a collectathon pack at first. By the time the beta footage had rolled around, it was. But originally, Banjo-Kazooie was Project Green, a fantasy pirate open sea RPG. And the two main villains were Captain Black Eye, who can be seen in Jolly Roger's Lagoon in Banjo-Tooie, and the Giant, who we never see, and is eventually replaced by Gruntilda. A lot of this is lore for another, or is information for another time, but I feel like I needed to get that out. Anyways. So why is Fungi Forest so special? Other than everything that I said. Would it surprise you at all if I told you that the Arich Queen was originally to be the final boss of Fungi Forest? They coded her, they put her in the game, they made it a very elongated, very challenging, actually, boss fight. I had to face her twice to be able to beat her for this footage. And that the scaredy cat Chunky was originally meant to fight her. It's my theory that the Dogadon Arena is actually the Giant's Arena from Banjo-Kazooie Beta, aka Project Dream. It makes sense. A fight against an oversized creature where you have to take to the creature's body itself instead of fighting on the one platform provided. A Shadow of the Colossus-esque scale for a boss fight that Rare simply could not program in time, and inevitably had to replace with a battle against a character who had much more easily programmed attack patterns, and was a much smaller size, taking up less hardware, skirting hardware limitations of the N64. Well, where did you fight the Giant? I hear some of you asking. That has actually been revealed to us through lost beta footage and hacking of the Banjo-Kazooie cartridge. There is a level that was announced alongside Fungi Forest, or Fungus Forest as it was known for Project Dream, called Mount Fire Eyes. And this level eventually got recycled too, into the fire side of Hailfire Peaks. At least parts of it, textures and ideas. Mount Fire Eyes was the the giant's throne. Have you ever thought it weird that there was lava inside? Lava was a main theme to the boss battle for Fungi Forest? Okay, let's talk lava for a second, because in the last episode I said that there was no lava on DK Isles. That was a half-truth. There are 3 areas you can find lava on DK Isles. In Donkey Kong 64, you can't find any lava in DK Isles before that. The first area is in a few areas in Angry Aztec and the Dogadon boss battle. The second area, this is really, switch your name. The second area is inside the lobby for Crystal Caves. The final area is the Dogadon rematch arena in Fungi Forest. But there's no lava anywhere else in Fungi Forest except for a bonus barrel, which hardly counts. Really? So, I theorized that Rareware had just thought up a really good, really climactic idea for a boss battle, and that they didn't want to see it go to waste. So instead of throwing it away, they recycled it and made the second Dogadon fight the main battle. But they didn't want to reject the original boss idea for Fungi Forest, the Arich Queen, because it was already done, and it worked well. It was a tough battle that wasn't too tough, and it was fascinating. They even had a voice clip for it. So, keep in mind, a lot of this stuff is theory that I've stumbled on, that other people haven't led me to, and that's important to mention. Not all of it, though. So, Ninja, why are you so dead set on the spider being the original main boss of Fungi Forest? Because ever since Donkey Kong Country 2, spiders and forests have been synonymous with one another. Take the Web Woods level in the Gusty Glade segment of Crocodile Isle. For the entire level, you become the animal companion Squitter. For the entire level. And that would be enough on its own. But it happened again, as the boss to the forest area in Donkey Kong Country 3 is Arich. The Arich King. Now I have another thing to prove this point home. In Donkey Kong Country 2, in Crazy Kremland, there's a boss called King Zing Sting. Why is he fighting you? To avenge his queen, who you took out in the first game. Queen Bee. So, if you killed Arich, would it be so far out of the question to think that Arich's significant other would want to see would have an interest in seeing the Kongs rubbed out? Particularly the 2 Kongs that were responsible for her husband's demise, Dixie and Kitty, later reskinned and remodeled into Tiny and Chunky. But wait a minute, Ninja, you're overloading us. Chunky's Kitty? Chunky is Kitty. And I have proof. I have proof in that Dixie is Tiny, because Tiny's hair-spinning move should be called the pigtail twirl. It's not. It's the ponytail twirl. Tiny has pigtails. Dixie has a ponytail. Hence why in DKC2, it was referred to by Wrinkly Kong, and Cranky a couple times, as the ponytail twirl. With that done, it's a simple conclusion to arrive that Chunky is a grown-up version of Kiddy Kong. What was Kiddy's only purpose in DKC3? Wait. He was big and he was strong. In fact, even though the only other character in the franchise known to be able to KO a Crusher by jumping on it. There's my evidence. There's my proof. Kiddy is chunky. Also the fact that Kiddy's a coward and Chunky is also a coward, but Kiddy is a baby, so that doesn't really hold as much water as the other argument. So, back to the level. What became of Fungi Forest? With the Kong's absence, yes, Tiny killed the Arich Queen. At least if you 100%ed the game, or even came close, because that's a fun boss battle. Even if you're not going for 100% because some of the bonus barrels are broken. Sorry. Lost the cool. I lost the cool there for a second, but the cool is back. The cool has returned. So the levels, but even though you killed Arich and the Arich Queen, it's reasonable to think that one of the children, one of the many spider younglings would have survived. And without the Kongs to stop them, and without the Kremlings in Fungi Forest, there really isn't that much life in Fungi Forest outside of the greenery. Yes, there's the rabbit. Yes, there's the owl. Yes, there's the killer tomatoes. Sorry, that's a thread we don't want to go down. The 90s were weird. The 90s were weird.
Things like comforting trick, the right red monsters of which we speak, except when he has a security.
The 90s.
Tomatoes! Tomatoes! Tomatoes in the city. Get out and stop these mutant fruits. Where will we find our brave recruits? Can well get rid of the tomato shoot. Tomatoes!
Anyway, so Funky entered the level, but Fungi Forest did not come up as the level's descriptor. Instead, the level is known as the Cobweb Catacombs. The Ariches, one of the few native beings, have completely overrun and overwhelmed Fungi Forest. And thick cobwebs bog everything down. In fact, you look around and quickly realize, if you're familiar with the level, that you didn't enter Fungi Forest where the original entrance was. You didn't enter in the clock chamber. You entered at the owl and rabbit chamber. As Funky, you stumble around a bit, but you have a tough time. Every time you touch one of the many, many cobwebs, blotting out the sun and creating maze-like tunnels, not unlike her tunnels in The Lord of the Rings 3. mini Ariches come to attack you and you have to leave the level. Because Fungi has no offensive abilities before his pads are earned. Already an instant departure from DK64 1. Ninja, why are you doing this? Why is this game so much darker than the original? Because Donkey Kong Country 2 was so much darker than the original. DK64, highlighting areas like Frantic Factory and Jungle Japes, the Crystal Caves, took after a lot from the original Donkey Kong Country. So, DK64 Returns should take a lot after its sequels. DKC2, 3, and Returns. And Returns 2. And a hypothetical Returns 3. So this gets to the point of why Fungi's here. You weave your way through the cobwebs a little bit and eventually you find a grayed out pad. If you step on the pad, Cranky will you'll get a message on your, let's see, what's a retro enough technology that it would be hipster worthy. You get a message on your PDA. It's a PDA. Because why not? You get a message on your PDA from Cranky Kong saying that you'll need crystal coconuts to advance any further. This reveals the plot point for the Kongs, why they came back to the island. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was to recover their gem of power, the crystal coconut. Something that doesn't grow on the new DK Isles. So, unfortunately, you have to leave the level. After leaving the level, Cranky greets you in the Cobweb Catacombs lobby with a lecture about coming back empty-handed and how much of a failure you are. Because he's Cranky Kong, and that's kind of his bit. It's kind of his one trick. He says that you'd better get some more crystal coconuts or some golden gears before you come back out again. But then he gives you the first of Fungi's potions. For the other Kongs, their moves, weapons, and gear carry over from DK64. Only Fungi needs potions. And downing his first potion gives him Retro Romp. Or Backwardus Excitus. Because DK64 did that. Retro Romp allows Fungi to use his pads to take on one of 3 random personas for as long as his crystal coconuts last. Cranky then gives you a full meter of crystal coconuts. And they become visible in the Cobweb Catacombs. You return to the level, and you can use the pad. One of 3 things will happen that will all basically get to the same end. Either A, Fungi will retro romp Surf Punk, hop on his wind surfboard, jet-powered wind surfboard from DKC2, and use it to fly high up, fly through the cobwebs fast enough to tear them. Or he'll become hipster Fungi, or not hipster, hippie Fungi, where he'll be able to dissuade the mini Arich from fighting him, even when he inevitably has to break through the cobwebs with his bare hands. With peace and love, bro. Don't know why I keep messing with this absent-mindedly. I guess I just gotta be messing with something. Or Funky will get grunge funk. Or he'll pull out a jalapeno flamethrower that allows him to easily scorch through the webs and the mini Arich that spawn when the webs are destroyed. And you have to work fast once you get this pad, because the coconuts deplete at about 1 every 2 seconds, regardless of which one you get. And if you run out of power before you get through, the challenge resets. Breaking through this will get you to the area where the giant mushroom once grew. The mushroom no longer exists. The Arich tore it down. It's gone. But in the center island that the mushroom used to be on is another funky pad and a good helping of crystal coconuts. Using this pad will allow you to get through to the clock area. And if you can get through to that area, you'll learn why it's been eternal night in Fungi Forest, allowing the Arich to dominate. Cobwebs have clogged up the clock. Wow. That was so alliterative that I honestly feel a little bit sick. The cobwebs clogged the clock. And you can't get rid of them. But if you look really carefully, you'll see one of the Kongs is in this area, other than Funky. He is imprisoned behind cobweb bars that can only be destroyed by Funky. Either with his pad. Destroying the bars any of the 3 ways will free Diddy Kong. Your very first real, and I use quotes because Funky is a real party member, but your very first real party member. You can now use the character swap barrel to switch Funky out and switch Diddy in. And if you search around, you'll find that little mushroom that leads up to the jetpack barrel blaster. And you'll learn that Diddy has no problem navigating I almost call it the webwebs, the cobweb catacombs, as his jetpack burns away the cobwebs on contact. And your first knee-jerk reaction might be, well, I'm going to go fly around the clock until it's all cleaned. That's actually not what you're supposed to do. If you do it, you'll simply exhaust your crystal coconuts. And you'll find that certain cobwebs don't burst into flame. More permanent background fixtures than temporary destructible ones. What you're actually supposed to do is to return to the surface, or not return to the surface, fly up to the platform where you would activate the clock. You will then be prompted to pull out Diddy's peanut pop guns. You can shoot the sun symbol, which will turn I almost called it Click Clock Woods. Yes, the day-night mechanic may have originally been planned for Click-Clock Woods and not Fungi Forest, but I'm just... Oh, I'm all Banjo-Kazooied up right now. My brain is spinning. But... Hang on. Yeah. By making the sun come out, much of the cobwebs, the ones that were all destructible by your jetpack, will burn up in the sunlight. And with that, all of the level's old passageways will be opened. There will be hundreds of not hundreds, but dozens of mini Arich for you to fight now, so getting anywhere will be hard. But that's part of the fun, right? That's part of the challenge. This brings us up to our next point. DK64 was incredibly creative with boss battles. Some of them were really fun. The Lanky versus Puff Toss boss battle involved you using a vehicle to defeat a boss. It wasn't as simple as all of them just being hit the boss with a barrel. Hit him with a barrel. Hit him with a barrel. Hit him with a barrel. Funky punched Dogadon to beat him. Tiny had to trick Jack into an EMP field. And so on and so forth. But one thing that never happened in the original game is using an animal buddy to fight a boss. That never happened in DKC1 either. But you know where it happened a lot? DKC2 and 3. So in order to fight the Queen Arich, the true boss of Fungi Forest, first you have to feed Clomp and Crush. That's right, no more Trough and Scoff, now it's Clomp and Crush, because you're helping the Kremlings. Enough regular bananas, Funky's psychedelic rainbow bananas, and Diddy's red bananas to open the first boss door. When you do, when you go in as Diddy, you'll drop into an animal crate immediately, and out pops Squitter. Squitter, the arachnid with the tennis shoes that could make temporary platforms out of thin air with its webs. This is how you fight the Queen Arich. Beating her will get you a couple of golden gears. Well, we'll get you a great big golden gear. We've eliminated B Locker from the equation by making mini and small and large golden gears. A large golden gear essentially equals like 30 smaller golden gears. But you'll still need a lot of gears to beat the game. 5 are available for each Kong, including Funky, on each level. And the big gear is worth about 30. We'll say it's worth 25. So let's say you go back to, what did I call it? Not the Green Scale Ghetto. I changed it because that seemed somewhat offensive to a German audience. The Reptile Refuge. That's what I called it. You head back to the Reptile Refuge with 5 mini gears between Funky and Diddy, and the big gear you got from killing the Arich Queen. Well, the Kremling scientists put all the gears on the wall next to the big fan, and they start to whir and click, buzz together, but the fan doesn't start up. Instead, a trail of lights illuminate. And at the end of that trail of lights, on the outside of the mechanic rock, is the door to Frantic Factory. Frantic Factory is our next destination in the next
Mind of Ninjo.
And until then, stay a brain and stay enlightened.